Are you eating?
He's eating chicken and waffles.
Did you miss the whole conversation?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm eating chicken and waffles.
Okay, well, we're live. Erwin, do you want to kick it off with your mouth full?
Let me just finish.
I mean, and you had a wife beater on. I mean, I just can't make this up.
He had a wife beater on earlier in the meeting. I didn't want to say anything.
I don't want to mention it, but
whatever. It's like weirdly, it's like humid in San Diego.
It is.
Which is also why I announced that I like bought Birkenstocks, because feet need to breathe, but I'm not rocking thong sandals. For the death of me.
Wear slides.
No,
like, where's the Nike slides? Like,
with some socks.
No, I want a little bit of like level up. I mean, they have like a nice suede. Like
they make your lower back feel so good when you walk because they're like supportive in the right way.
Yes, they come with patchouli? You dab along.
Free patchouli.
Well, all right, I'll do a quick intro, I guess, so I can keep eating. Welcome back to Brandbeats. My name is Erwin. If you guys haven't like already listened, and we can do a quick round table.
My name is Andrew.
Oh,
cool.
You did it. We're good.
Someone.
I'm not talking together, so like, I'm JoJo.
Yep. Just someone jump in.
I'm Eric.
I'm Juanita.
Lindsay, it's just you.
I said my name. No, Lindsay, where are you?
I didn't say anything. And this is Lindsay.
Welcome, Lindsay.
Introduce myself already.
So to preface or to give a disclaimer, throughout this podcast, I'm going to be eating chicken and waffles and sipping on beer as we engage in this conversation, or this continued conversation around Black Lives Matter and really POC within organization and our experience. This episode, is going to be a continuation of our past conversations, but we really wanted to begin to lean into just what we've seen as far as different responses from organizations, and our take on it. Again, it has a framework, but it's going to be pretty loose in how we talk about it. So just enjoy the ride as we talk about race.
Can we talk about race and your wife beater?
We can talk about the wife beater. This can go wherever we want it to. Want it to. And yes, I'm wearing a wife beater because it's a little bit humid in San Diego, and I don't know where any of my other like lightweight shirts are. So wife beater.
Where all your Kanye tees? With the holes in them?
I don't know where anything is. Being at home this much is really, really taking a toll on my organization of my clothing.
I could see that.
All right.
I mean, I'm curious, like on the subject matter then that you brought up, like, has anybody seen anything, like what responses have you seen that you feel like have been meaningful and like positive? Are you talking about from the lens of like brands too, Erwin? Like brand response? Because I was even looking at stuff today, and I still have like had that disgusting feeling of like people put a banner on their website, and it's like, we stand in solidarity with the Black Lives Matter movement. And I'm like, it feels so much like so many people are still just checking the box, or just like trying to get out of the way. Like, you know what I mean? Like, ooh, let me step off the railroad tracks for a second, versus like, who have you seen like do something more meaningful?
Ben and Jerry's.
Like, I'm about to say, can we kick off and talk about
Thank you. Yes, Ben and Jerry's. Ben and Jerry's.
Infographics.
I'm going to be buying that expensive ice cream.
Brutality. Like, they're just here for this movement, and I'm here like I'm here for Ben & Jerry's. They are expensive, but I will buy it every time.
I do like it. I'm gonna play devil's advocate. What are they actually doing internally within the organization to create organizational shift? Like, are they not? You can put out all the infographics you want, but I want to know like what they're doing internally to actually make sure that people are being heard and that they're not just playing the numbers game and looking at opportunities and being opportunistic in this time. And I know they've always been like very supportive of like different movements and diversity. So I'm not necessarily calling them out specifically, but I'm using them as an example where like you can create all of this content and all of this information, but is it truly representative of what you believe internally, or do you have a great marketing machine? And I think just globally, that's what I've seen from different organizations. They're like, have great marketing machines, or they say like, we're gonna really improve leadership stats for like brown and black people and POC within our organization. And those things seem to be like skewing the real meaning and skewing like what really needs to happen. And for example, I saw like, so one example would be this organization that I saw on Twitter. They did like a whole campaign where they created some BLM shirts, and one of the shirts' name was Breathless. It didn't have any impactful messaging on it. It literally was just like some icons, and it was called Breathless. And in order to unlock access to the shirt, you had to donate to an organization. That part was good. But then to have a shirt named Breathless just showed that there was still some like lack of clarity on what's needed during this time. And then we even see some organizations like renaming stuff, saying like, we'll never use the term master bedroom again. But they're still not showing Black people homes within specific areas. So even though the law of redlining doesn't exist, there's still like mental redlining that's happening. So it's like, I see a lot of these like kind of words, and I see a lot of these like things that don't really matter being changed, which maybe that's like the micro progression that we talked about in the last Brandbeats. So I see a lot of words being changed, but I don't see like deeper organizational shift and that's the part that's uncomfortable.
Yeah.
That's the part that needs to happen.
I think it goes back to that performative activism we talked about, how there's a difference between having a black square on Instagram versus actually donating and taking action. And it goes back to just like, what's more powerful, words or taking action, or, you know, actually doing something and standing up, as opposed to just, oh, all right, here's a new name for something, or here's this thing that paints us as a very progressive organization, but in reality, it's like you're saying, Erwin, internally, that's not really the case, you know?
I think when we talk about Ben & Jerry's specifically, I mean, like, obviously we share a lot of content on social media. And so it's like your job to kind of dig into, like, find out what's real and what's not. But like the fact that you have these two old white men who like are socially charged, not only with like their online content, but they actually create like products to talk about it as well. I think that is something, because it's like, it's in people's faces. And then you hear about like, you know, the two founders being arrested because they're a part of the protest. The thing that separates us, or a lot of, I guess, bigger companies like this, is like, they don't have to be. They can just like go ahead and just like post a couple social posts. And I think that's what kind of separates Ben & Jerry's versus like people like Facebook and IG, who are still just trying to do things for profit, even though they're not inflicting anything personal or without doing the thing without like a personal gain. I had also heard that the reason why that their ice cream is so high is because they do give back to communities. And like for those initiatives, again, like I'm behind that, because it is a white charged company and they don't have to do it. But the fact that they are actually pushing initiatives behind their work, I think is important, or it can also just be a face or a conversational start for a lot of these other companies that are just like, I'll just have a commercial with a whole bunch of diverse people in it, and then this is my stance on the matter. Like if you go to the website, it's not Black Lives Matter. It literally is how to dismantle white prejudice or white privilege.
White supremacy.
Yeah, white supremacy. And I'm just like, bam.
Yeah. defund the defund the police. Like I totally agree with Jojo. Like I have not personally seen other organizations who are out there actually talking about what it is that Black people want done. I've gotten very quickly tired of seeing TV programs say, oh, we're not going to have this, white person voice this character anymore. Like we're not going to have, we're not going to call it a master bedroom. It's like, no one asked for that, one. Two, you're missing the point entirely. Mm-hmm. Nobody cares that a white man voiced the Cleveland on Family Guy for 20 years. Nobody cares. And so to remove him from that, you are missing the point entirely of what Black people are asking you for. We are asking you for equality. We are asking you to understand what defund the police means, not take this man out of his job.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's like too little, too late. Got him in dope like a while ago.
Mm-hmm.
But now we've moved on.
Well, I mean,
we want true equality.
But I think what's important to know, and what's important to like give credit to an organization like Ben and Jerry's, is that like they are setting an example for everyone within their organization, right? So even, and like Jojo says, they don't have to do this. I think that they historically have always been like, I mean, when I think of Ben and Jerry's, I'm like, oh yeah, the hippy dippy like ice cream brand that's super expensive, right? But it's also like quality ingredients. They want to pay their workers, right? Like there's a reason behind all of that, right? And so I think the important thing to know about what they're doing, and I agree with you, Erwin, that it's like what they're like putting out to the world is one face, and are they actually standing behind that face and doing the other actions to support things internally? Like, what are they implementing within their organizations to do that? I would say, like, it's difficult to judge or to say that they are doing enough or not doing enough unless you're there, right? And unless you're in the ranks. Because let's think about it, like, who's working at their ice cream stores? Like, I don't know if you've ever been to the one in the Haight, but it's like, it's usually like high school kids. It's like, you're dealing with all the tourists that are coming to check out, like, Ashbury Haight, and it's like full of like very diverse people out there. So it's not, but I think that what they're doing is they're empowering their employees and people within their organization of like, and they are like putting a flag down and saying, this is what we stand for, this is what we stand behind, right? And so I think that if I was a kid working in an organization like that, then I would feel a certain way, or I would feel at liberty to express myself, to say what I feel, say what I think. And also, I think that I would feel like supported in having maybe what are considered revolutionary ideas, right?
Yeah.
And I get it, like to a certain degree, it's like everyone's grasping for straws of like, oh shit, like no one wants to be called a racist. Like nobody does. Nobody wants to think like I'm part of this problem. I'm like making this worse. Everyone wants to be like, well, I don't do that. And, so they're trying to make the changes that they see that in a lot of ways, like you say, like, it's kind of inconsequential. Like I saw that note today about like realtors in Texas, or was it yesterday? Realtors in Texas will no longer refer to the master bedroom as the master bedroom. And I never thought about it in the sense of like slavery, but then I was like, geez, I guess that's right. I guess that's true, right? Like, oh shit, that's pretty messed up. Yeah, that's pretty messed up. But I guess it's, this is the largest bedroom of the house, like, but it's a complete mind shift from, from where we've been.
Yeah. What I was saying is I was using them as an example so that other organizations just don't jump on it and say like, all we have to do is some marketing to make everybody feel okay. Because I do think Ben and Jerry's like legitimately had the best response, and it came from somewhere that was of a solid foundation and a belief that they actually truly believe. And if we just honor or recognize just their response and not like everything else they're doing, which they are, then it like leaves room for other organizations to go like, oh shit, all right, that works. Let's just create some infographics.
Right. I think that's the hard part, right? Like, and Wanda, you hit on it right on its head. It's like gestures are okay, but they feel like lip service unless you're inside and you see them actually doing things like, hey, are you making actions? Are you spending money internally or company time to go like, hey, maybe we should stop. And even though we support this movement, even though we don't think we have an inclusion or diversity problem, like, are we stopping to take a moment and look inward at ourselves and reflect and go, should we set something up? Should we take a look at how our numbers sort of stack up? Should we, like, if you're not doing those things, but you're putting the banner up, that's shitty. Like, but the problem is, like, from the outside looking in, we all think like, you just put a fucking banner up. You know what I mean? So maybe it's a little short on me to like get judgmental about when I see something like that, because I don't know what people are doing and I can't expect them to overhaul everything without risking everybody in the company like on a dime. They have to like do things in a really cautious like way, and let's hope that they are. You know, I think the reason, like even you're saying too, like Ben and Jerry's, like I guess what they did in some ways, they did a little bit more to support, like to show their alignment with the movement, but they also like, gestures are all good, but they mean a little bit more when you put yourselves in harm's way. Like we talk about all the time that Nike used to come up with a stance that was like, I'm not afraid to have unpopular opinion, or if I lose some fans, fine. And Jerry's maybe did the same thing when they called out the president and said, I want you to denounce racism and so on and so forth. And because we know that there are a lot of people who devoutly are going to hold that against them as a company, I see that as an expression of like putting themselves in harm's way fiscally to say like, it matters more to us to make that statement than it does to make the money from those people. And so like, that's where it's like, there are gestures that can be more meaningful. But I think you're right. Like, it's like, unless you're inside the doors, like I think that's important for people to go like, hey, is the company that you're at, are they just talking about stuff, or have they made it clear that they're trying to take steps to do something, whatever it is, like look at themselves, or just doing something to change it? Because I think a lot of times people say these or make these gestures because the problem is so deep rooted and grandiose. It's almost like you can feel apathetic about your ability to change it in some ways because the problem is so big. It's almost like when we talk about the environmental problem, like a lot of these companies out here people don't see their own like individual impact on these things, even though like you have to have a fundamental change in the way that you live and operate in order to affect that. And I think it's the same, if not bigger, in the context of like systemic bias that exists, or racism that exists in our culture and in a capitalistic society, or an American society, I should say.
Yeah, I think to everyone's point, to me as a consumer, just kind of from the outside looking in, it seems like a lot of companies are just doing the bare minimum to just be like, hey, we're not racist, you know? But I don't think that's enough. And again, as a consumer, just from that perspective.
Yeah. Eric, that was totally gonna be my next question. Like for you guys, like as consumers, I was talking to Erwin and Jojo about this yesterday. Like all we do is shop online right now. And I noticed one of my favorite clothing brands has suddenly slapped up like 3 to 4 Black models. They always had white models and suddenly they have Black models, Jojo. And I've been struggling with myself because I almost want to write in as a consumer and just say something that I saw. And a perfect example of that is actually we had, I forgot who it was, maybe it was a candidate or a recruiter, noticed something on Basics website. It was a brand that we worked with. The guy had a sexual assault allegation against him. The person was super nice and just said, hey, FYI, this person has a sexual assault allegation against them. You might want to, rethink that. We've changed the photo immediately. It was like that. Like, would you guys be a consumer who would write into a brand and say, this is what I have noticed. I'm loyal to your brand. I like your brand, but this is making me feel this way.
Oh, right now, go.
Oh, no, I was about to say, it almost like one person's voice doesn't matter anymore. Like, I feel like it has to be a movement. Like, I've heard numerous occasions of people like who actually worked with the company and like done like maybe like a production, and like it was their ideas and they didn't get any credit, and they wrote in, they were loud about it and they never did anything about it. It almost has to be like a joint effort to actually make a change for people, to brands to actually like hear them out. And I'm thinking about like Jeremy Scott, who takes a lot of people's like the cultural ideas from Black people and never gives them credit for it. And I think that we're in a generation now where we can make a difference. It's just that we can't really do it individually. We have to do it as a collective.
Yeah, collectively. And I mean, like hitting on both those, I know in this time I've been like heated a lot. So I've been messaging brands like right and left. And it at least makes
Do you have a template, Erwin? You have like a template already of like what you're gonna say?
It literally just comes in the moment, and it at least makes me feel a little bit better. Even if I know it's not going to change, it makes me feel better, and it lets me know that I'm not going to rock with it anymore. I think that's like if you, I think again, my favorite brand, Pierre Moss, and like what Kirby does, like that is my favorite brand because he is a Black man and he does speak his mind and like talks about the true issues that affect me as a person. And so one of the beautiful things that I think happened with COVID in general is that at the beginning of COVID, everybody started realizing that small businesses are going to be struggling. So then it brought everybody into this focus where we all started like thinking about small businesses and like mom and pop shops and us supporting mom and pop shops at a larger scale. I think that was then amplified by BLM. By now, we not only care about small, but we also care about small and where does this stuff come from? What is the message? What is the thing behind these small businesses? So I think like post this, there's going to be a beautiful like leveling of the playground, I hope, where now we are more invested in not just Amazon, but we're actually invested in the people behind the organizations, the people who like, what is their vision? What do they stand for? Who are they like giving to? Like now I'm definitely going to buy the Pierre Moss shoes on Friday because I'm just like, this is the guy who gets me and I get him and I just want to like support all day. So I feel like for me, even if the brands that I once liked don't change, it's allowing me to sift them out. Give you my money if you're not going to like actually support me beyond gestures.
That makes sense. You're right. Like, I'm sorry. I didn't mean that. I realized my headphones are real loud. But it is true because like it would mean so much more than like putting a banner on. I don't need like a sign in your window. Like I would rather have you just tweet out, here are the 3 things that we're doing. They're going to take us 6 months. Like we're hiring an independent consultant to come in and assess how or score us on like how our diversity, because like we're aligned with this movement, but maybe we don't think we're a problem, but we should take a hard look at ourselves. So we're gonna hire an independent contractor to come in and score us on our diversity, take a look at how our hiring process is and help us sort of make them better or help us discover something about ourselves that we didn't ever think about or recognize or know. And you could talk about that as a company. You could just say, this is one thing we're doing. It may take us 6 months, but we're doing something. We're making an investment in it to try and weed out where we may have had a blind spot. And that would mean so much more than signing a window. So
like I would appreciate, like you're saying, I would appreciate companies just saying, I don't know, instead of making like really quick movements. Because I think the template that people have been using literally is like the same. Like they see somebody else post, they're like, we're going to increase diversity numbers. We're going to do this. We're going to do this. We're going to make sure our statistics are better, etc. And it's almost like, and I've been having this conversation a lot. I'm already super against data in general, because I think statistics and data is skewed and is inherently biased because of the inputs of that data. So that's already like a thing with data. And we've talked about that in length, even in regards to like how you create balancing intuition with data. And data should be used to like prove the effectiveness of a story that is developed from intuition. But when it comes to this, it's like data has created an easy way for people to feel good and to alleviate their conscience, because they can just now say, okay, we don't have enough Black people or like POC in leadership. This BLM movement is like really tough and it's hard on me. So I'm going to make sure our data looks better. I'm just going to hire a few Black people and now we're all good.
Exactly.
And I feel good. And to me, that is like, again, that's missing the point. It's not, so it's a symptom of the cancer, not the actual cancer that's being solved. And so I feel like because of our reliance on data, as people and as industries, not just design, but in general, every industry has become so reliant on data that we now rely on it more than our like actual humanity to make decisions and to prove or disprove points. And this is not an issue that can be solved just with data. Because just because you hire more Black people in leadership, and just speaking as a Black man, just because you hire more Black people in leadership, that does not mean it's representative of me or every Black person. And granted, it'll probably open up more and new opportunities, and that's great. And that should just be one of the things, but it's not the thing.
I think that we had talked about, it was Erwin and Lindsay and I, was this idea of quickly hiring more Black people in agencies or just in general. And I'm very against that. One, because obviously that should just be a thing, but a part of it being a trend, I would prefer to see like what we're doing to support Black-owned businesses. Like, how are we getting more workforce into those companies? How are we investing more money into those companies versus just being like creating a list of Black people to choose from to add to a white company that already exists, you know, just to build up their diversity, you know, stats or data. Again, because internally, if the inclusion or diversity doesn't make sense, you're just bringing more people to your company to make it more cool, you know? And I think that the focus should be more on like, how do we elevate, you know, Black people in general? And that one starts with their own worth, you know? And I feel like my worth comes from seeing us win, you know? I know my own value by knowing my history, by also knowing what's currently around me. And I think I said it before, by living in San Diego with like 5,000 restaurants here, there's only 30 that are Black owned. Yeah. And like, I feel like only internally we're highlighting that, but it would be nice to see it within other companies.
Yeah. I think also too, it's about, sorry, not to interrupt you, but it's also about like, what are we doing as an organization, or what are larger organizations doing to help mentor and bridge the gap and sort of level the playing field for the youth that's coming into the workforce, for like people that are like coming into college, for people that like have never had anyone go to college before in their family, and like how overwhelming that can be, like that whole experience, right? Like we talk about equity and like learning how to fish but not having a pole, right? Like that's I think a very powerful story that a lot of us have heard recently, where it's like, yes, we all know the anecdote, teach a man to fish, you know, whatever. We all know it. I don't think I have to repeat it, but it's also, it's like, hey, guess what? It's like, not only do I not have a pole, fine, you're going to give me a pole, but you're not going to give me the edge to know what's the best pole, what's the best line, like what's the best like commentary. Like there's a lot of like, I don't know, I don't even know if I can call this like the soft skills, right? That like this intrinsic behaviors or accepted behaviors in speech and things that like, you're just not, you don't even know what you don't know, you know, like if you're a young person coming into a brand new arena that you've never, not only you've never been exposed to, but no one in your family generationally has ever been exposed to, you're at a complete disadvantage. You have nobody to guide you. You have nobody to tell you like, hey, when people talk about this is what they're talking about. It's like, you have to learn what the secret language is. You have to learn what the nuances are. It's like completely overwhelming. And so what are larger organizations as a whole doing to help mentor those disadvantaged people, people of color, Black people, like minorities all over? Because it isn't, you know, it's something that affects a lot of people, like people that are, I mean, like, you know, we talk about being a country of immigrants, like there's a lot of people that are still coming here that don't dominate the language, you know, and like, how are we bridging the gap and, you know, making things more equitable for people? And how are larger corporations and organizations contributing to that? You know, what are they doing? Not just like, are you hiring, are you checking more boxes? Like, well, that's not going to do it.
I think putting a banner up within our community is finance, and it's because no one knows anything about it. And the Black community specifically, all I ever knew about being financially responsible was being cheap. Like that's all we ever knew, right? Because we seen our parents be frugal. All I ever seen was like, we can't afford that, or like, you know, I never knew about a savings account. I never knew what like an IRA or investment, or like even like we didn't have the opportunities to have things passed down to us and how to like build off of that. I think the finance aspect of like the brown community or the Black community, just period, is something that we need to kind of uplift and talk about at a young age.
Absolutely. I mean, that's a really great point. I mean, I don't know if any of you guys have had the opportunity to like sit down and have a financial advisor. Like for me, that was like a mind-blowing experience where I was like, yes, I made it. I can actually invest money somewhere, you know, like I was like, yes, I actually have money in I have a savings account, you know, like it was, but yeah, for a lot of people, like where do you don't know where to go. Like you spend, like all your reality is being frugal and surviving. And so you don't have the context or the equipment to like get ahead and to figure out how to play the game and what is the game. You have no clue, you know. It's like, I mean, how many people like professional athletes, and I know that this has been talked about a lot, that get these huge contracts and then they end up poor a few years later. Like it's asinine, it's crazy, but it's like no one teaches you financial responsibility. Like these are the things you should do when you have like X amount of money. Like I always thank my sister because she got me this.
And I was gonna say, just to like, if anybody's listening, just to be clear, it's not like Black or brown people are inherently stupid. It's literally we didn't have. I think the fishing pole thing was amazing because it's like other people have been fishing their whole life with like, and so over time they learned like the best fishing methods. They had the best pole. We've just been given a fishing pole. And now we have to figure out like, what is the best lure? What is the best everything? And we're literally trying to learn. And people are saying like, why can't you fish?
Totally.
And then they're like, this Black person over here fished really well. And you're like,
right.
Tell him he's from the country. He's been doing it for a while. I don't know.
Like, it's what Chris Rock said. Like, he is a celebrity and he lives next door to like doctors and lawyers. He had to be exceptional in order to even be in the same space as normal people. So it's like we have to be exceptional in order to be in this same space. So there is just this disadvantage that needs to be recognized in order for programs like that to exist. It's like when you're hiring these people and when you're hiring people of underprivileged or underserved communities, what programs are you putting into place to make sure that they use and know how to use their money properly? Like an organization who is paying you X amount of dollars, like how do we make sure that this person's money goes a long way? So you care about them as a person with the knowledge of everything that comes with them. And that's why like the whole like I don't see color racism is so hurtful and harmful because you're literally not recognizing the disadvantages that happen. And so you hire this really intelligent person who has worked hard, was exceptional, but doesn't have the financial literacy. How are you making sure that they can build wealth for their future?
But I mean, with the fishing pole, there are Black people today that took that fishing pole, killed themselves to learn how to fish. And in Atlanta right now, low-income white families are still 2 times as likely to get a housing loan than middle and upper-class Black families. Like, so we took the fishing pole, we learned how to fish, probably learned how to fish better than white people did, and they're still giving white people loans in Atlanta and probably other places in the country for houses, and Black people can't get.
Well, because they got access to a grocery store.
There you go.
They're like, you guys have access to the grocery store. Those other people still got to fish.
That is the best way.
And they're literally like, when you catch it, it's gonna be real good though. It's gonna be. But yeah, I think that just goes to the point. Like, just there is this like disparity and disadvantage that exists, and it takes you to. And that's why I like what Andrew was saying. It's like, it takes an organization to recognize that and to say, I don't know. Because to literally say, you know, means that I don't know. I don't think you can know. Like even us as an organization, it's like we don't know, and we're still like working through this and trying to figure it out. And our DE&I program is trying to dig into these things in a more like humanistic way, as opposed to just saying like we know exactly what to do, we can handle this. And it's like we have a diverse leadership team, and that's where I become disenchanted and like about the numbers. I'm like, we have a diverse leadership team, but there's still things, and we all have things, and it's better to say I don't know and then lean into educating yourself. And something you said in our like other call, Andrew, was like, recognize that you do have an unconscious bias. It takes you recognizing in order for you to actually grow and to actually make change. You can't just like jump to action and go like, yo, I solved racism in my organization because now I have like, even if you literally have 70% Black leadership, it doesn't mean you solve it, because they might still not understand financial literacy. They might not feel included. You just have a bunch of Black people who now feel disenfranchised within your organization.
Yeah, sorry to interrupt you, Erwin, but inherently, I mean, honestly, like until, and not that I've been through this 12-step program, but right, I guess we've all heard about this 12-step program, or it's something that a lot of people hear about. It's like, you know, before you can move on, like the first step, like, you know, to overcome like this crazy thing that's addiction for most people that have addiction problems. The first step of getting over that is admitting that there's a problem. And there's a reason why admitting that there's a problem is the first step, because if you don't come to terms with the fact that there's a problem, then you're not ready to make any sort of change whatsoever. You're not ready to commit to understanding that maybe you were wrong, or that maybe there's a better point of view, a different way to approach something, unless you say like, okay, this is a problem. I have a problem, or I don't understand, you know? And so that's why that program, the first step of like making huge radical change, is admitting that there's a problem to begin with.
Right. And living with that, because I think the thing that feels so gross, like in the long term, is like, I mean, to the point you were both just making, it's like there's not some end zone. I don't care what it looks like. If 5 years from now, whatever happens this year, we're still going to deal with this to some extent. It may look different. It may look better, but, and God, do I hope it does. But I think like we really have to understand that it's like, whatever you try and do today, the first and most important thing to your point, Wani, is like recognize that you may have these blind spots in the way that you're doing whatever you're doing, even though you don't think this. Like, you definitely have blind spots about yourself. So you have to recognize this about yourself. Do something this year, and then do something next year, and do something the year after that, and recognize this. Like, it's not, there's no checkbox so that I don't step out of the way of the train. Like, just keep going. Yeah, just keep like changing the way you're doing stuff.
You don't get an anti-racism trophy.
Yes,
there's
not a degree.
You made it.
I have a question about,
like, do I get a participation trophy? I mean,
I guess my question is like, because we want to talk about diversity within like brands or just companies, I want to know like what you guys feel about like internally making the change versus like outwardly telling the change that you're going to make. Because I know like I've had my personal issues with it just being like a moment of us addressing like, this is the things that we're doing. These are our stats and data. This is what we're doing to like, you know, show that we're progressing, versus like the people that are quiet, the brands that we don't know what they're doing like internally. Do we care about that? Or do we just more so care about like what they're actually doing to make that change? Because I'm sure there's a lot of brands out here that are making a change and we just don't hear about it.
Mm-hmm. I mean, asking for us is like, what are we doing as a brand, or what are we seeing brands that we work with doing?
No, just brands and period, like period. Do we care?
You're saying like, what do we want to see from them?
Like, yeah, do we care if they announce that they're making the internal like initiatives? Because right now I feel like if brands come forward and be like, oh, we're working on our diversity inclusion team and we're doing this X, Y, and Z, it kind of feels like a hype. And I do commend that people are taking a look at themselves internally and trying to fix that. But like, do we care that they're telling us about it versus just doing it?
No, I mean, I care to the extent that I want to see action happen. I don't care for like personal reason, like I need to see like these things, but I do in the sense that like I want to see progression happen on this issue. So I think what bothers me more is gesture without action. Like I support this movement without an explanation of how you support it.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Like when we say that's why like Erwin was saying, you see a banner, you see a sign in a window. Like I don't want to see a sign in a window. I want to see like a sign in a window and a plan. And I'd rather have somebody be quiet until they're ready to talk about what they're also going to do than say I support it but never say anything about it. About how they support it.
Yeah, because like right now, I feel like those banners without anything is just literally your brand saying the sky is blue. It's like, yeah.
Oh shit! Sorry.
That's what I'm saying. Like
yeah,
at this point, it is kind of like a no shit. All right, and like I completely agree.
Yeah, and
isn't that like the best way to disagree?
Oh.
I think I'll take that from a creative perspective as well. Just within our design industry, you see a lot of streetwear brands making t-shirts, right? And people have said, oh, you know, diversity isn't a brief. Diversity isn't just a creative project. But yet people like Erwin, just type them up a little bit, making these t-shirts that also donate tons of money to these causes. So I guess like, where's the line between gestures and action? Because to me, it's kind of doing both, right? Like there's a gesture, there's beautiful art coming out of this, but there's also action in the forms of donations and things like that.
So
go ahead, Erwin.
So I had trouble with like non-POC creating things to donate, and also like self-promoting, right? I think that this was an opportunity for creatives to put in things that sorry, I'll chime back in 1 second.
Oh. Okay.
Oh, that.
Wow. You know,
what the hell? Something weird happened. I mean,
there's no earthquake, right?
Look, there's for sure a line like you want people to. I don't know that there's quote unquote a line so much as like I want to see some form of an action from people, and that like maybe internally to look introspectively at your company, to at least have a readout, to whatever it is, like do something differently than you're doing today, to like we were talking about a couple weeks ago, like how are you going to take a step in the right direction, at least in terms of like your thought and your process, because like all of that's how the change is, like that's required is cultural, it's systemic, it's bigger than donate. To be frank with you, like it's bigger than just donating. And that's what I mean. Like, I don't want people to be like, we donated $10 million because we had it to BLM and now we're good. Yet we put like, that is literally a Band-Aid. That is a fucking Band-Aid. If you're not changing the way that you are operating yourself and or operating at a higher level. You back? Yeah, welcome back.
To your point, Andrew, like it has to be like, it does have to be bigger than just like donating. And I think it also has to be bigger than a degree of like hiring people of color in your office. I think it's like the combination of the DE and I to make it flow together. Because one thing, like we said, like, we know diversity can't be anything without inclusion, and then with equity. So it's like really taking a look in the mirror. And when I said, like, do you guys care about how the brand's perceiving itself? It's like you guys said, like, I don't care unless you're actually putting it into action. Actually don't care unless I see the action. Like this is what we have done. And I think brands like or not brands, but companies even like Netflix. You know what I mean? They're very in the background doing their thing and fucking representing within their company, and it's not for fucking show. They are putting in the work. And they have their own values or whatever, and it's not a trend. It's actually something that they embody within their company, and it's exuding to us because the consumers now are having more access to like fucking documentaries and Black movies and things like that, and that's just a reflection of what they exude internally.
It's like what they already believe. Because even if you look at the content that Netflix had before this, it's like they had a bunch of Spike Lee stuff and like original Spike Lee series, like.
And they work with Spike Lee.
And that's just what they had.
Yeah.
Because they take diversity and inclusion and equity serious from the jump. So it wasn't like a new thing to them. And now they're just like, I don't even know if they're necessarily doubling down. They're literally just doing what they've always done.
That's what I mean. And they don't want credit for it. Like they're not asking for credit for it. But and that's why it's not, that's the scary part about everything else. It's like what I would almost rather see. I'm a little bit tired of the press release, the top down, like curated sort of like, here's our position as a company. Like, I'd rather hear from, hey, I work at fucking Nike and here's what I see them doing. And this is why I think that they're doing great. Or, hey, I work at whatever the fuck company, I don't want to call anybody out, and I don't see them doing anything. And I just want to put that out there that like, this is my call to, I think this company is on the right side of this from a value perspective, but I don't see them. I don't necessarily understand that yet. It doesn't have to be like, I hate you. Like, please, let's talk about that. Like, I'd rather hear from people and let it be more grassroots around like, how does it feel at the bottom than the top down PR release version of that. Yeah.
And like, I was going to say, just to reference like another brand's response that was super amazing. For me, personally, was like, we are brain dead. The streetwear brand. One, they created a shirt. They raised like $1 million or something. They raised a lot of money to donate back to organizations, and they were literally tracking it as they went, being super responsive and open. And then since they do a lot of collaborations, as a streetwear brand does, with larger organizations, they legit called out those organizations and said, we work with you, and in order to work with us, this is what we believe. We charge you to donate as well. We charge you to do X, Y, and Z. So they charge them with action. So it's a very Patagonia moment, right? So I think what you're saying is like, it's a smaller scale brand, because streetwear brands are smaller scale than large brands, but they took a more grassroots approach that was more honest and nimble and like really authentic. And to me, that's what I like to see.
For sure,
right? Yes. They didn't really, it wasn't like a press release or anything like that. It was just like, they just took action real quick and then they continue to take action.
And I will say, as a person of color, I think I personally prefer when brands are kind of more low key about it. Obviously I want them to take action, but what's that cliche? Like integrity is doing the right thing when no one's watching. And I think that speaks volumes during this time. It's like, you're not doing it just because it's a trend. Like you've been saying, it's just like, you're doing it because you've always been doing it. Like it's true to your DNA,
I agree with all of you guys. I think like I right now commercials are just like being blasted at you. And I know like Covered California, they have a really powerful commercial right now. Like I get goosebumps every time I see it, but like the end of it is just the screen flashing, enough is enough is enough. And I'm like, but it makes me challenge brands, but okay, it's enough, but what are you doing? Like what was the stopping point for you? Like, why is this just now becoming?
Hold on, Lindsay, I'm perplexed. Why are you still watching commercials?
Dude, thank you.
Okay.
I was like,
I
thought about, how do I find this commercial? Because I don't know.
Why are you watching commercials?
Y'all are foul. I don't pay for the extension of Hulu. I pay for my $9.99 Hulu.
Yep.
I deal with my commercials.
Thanks, sis.
Okay, fair.
I have the cheaper Hulu too, but I just kind of tune out. I don't remember. I don't remember the last commercial that I.
For some reason,
my parents have Hulu, so therefore I have Hulu.
100%.
I hate you guys.
I'm sorry.
So you guys should have all seen this commercial then. Like it's a Covered California insurance commercial. They put all these really just like melancholy, sad adjectives up. They blast on the screen. Then they show you all of the names of Black individuals who have died. Then they say all these happy adjectives. And then it's to the song, All the Leaves Are Brown. And then they just say enough is enough is enough. And it comes blasting at you. What?
I was saying, like,
it's like the insurance free though. Like,
yeah, that's what I'm saying.
I'm confused by the commercial. I'm like, what is your impact here? What are you doing besides blasting words at me?
Weird and scary coming from a healthcare company or health insurance. Right. Mainly because it's like, you guys didn't always care about Black people.
That's what I'm saying.
It's kind of creepy. But I mean, I do understand, like, there's also a disparity in like care when it comes to like brown people when they enter into Black and brown people when they enter into like a medical room, from them not being offered the same services and being turned down services to a doctor saying like, we don't offer that when they really do.
When Medicare finally got passed, they were ordered, hospitals said the government said in order for hospitals to get this money, they have to desegregate. Hospitals were like, nah. And then they didn't see that money come in. And within 2 years, 3,000 hospitals desegregated. But they still didn't want to operate on Black people. Like, I watched a story, or I listened to a story about a light-skinned Black man who went to a hospital in Atlanta and he passed, and the doctors started working on him instantly. It wasn't until his family showed up that they realized, oh shit, this man's Black. They stopped operating on him immediately, sent him to the African-American hospital where he died because he could not get adequate care. A doctor takes a Hippocratic oath to do no harm. Yet the color of my skin is going to allow you to let me die. Trans people now no longer can get discriminated against because they are trans, because we now have no protection for them. Yeah, they can get health care, but people can say, no, I don't want to treat you.
But that's what I'm saying, like, even when there's laws, and I think this is like a conversation that has been happening a lot, where people are like, oh, those like segregatory laws are gone, so you're good now. But it's like, laws introduced reason for bias. You getting rid of those laws does not remove that bias and that hate that is in someone's heart. Laws don't shift someone's heart at all.
I was gonna say, laws give you license to openly be a fucking, I'm sorry, to be a bigot, to be, to be racist, to be like, to be this way. I completely agree with you.
It's literally like, just because those laws went away, just because Jim Crow's gone doesn't mean it's gone. Doesn't mean people can't secretly do it, because if this is who owns these things, then those things can still happen, just a little bit more subtle. I just don't have to serve you.
I think like the hospital conversation is like a whole nother Brandbeats, and I have a whole lot to fucking say about them.
Sorry, that still just really has me triggered for the past.
It's a complete trigger for us as Black people. I think when we talk about the medical industry, but to your point, like with commercials, it's like, like the last commercial I gave a fuck about was when we could buy cassettes in the infomercials after 11 p.m. That's the last time I gave a fuck about commercials.
But otherwise, I was like really quick on the medical thing. So we're gonna switch topics, I'm sure. But people should read Medical Apartheid. It's like a really, really good book. That's it.
Yeah.
Now we can switch topics.
Okay, we don't have a Brandbeats on that topic because it is a topic.
Listen, we could just write an essay on it.
So back to the organization.
I think going back to like talking about diversity within businesses, I think we kind of touched on it beforehand, but I think it's also this level of stature of being a more white-faced company versus having diversity. And I only say this because of growing up, we did not get the opportunity to be around what we consider professionalism, we didn't get the opportunity to speak a language that, you know, only are privy to white people. I knew very little about Excel sheets. And just like on the topic of all of that combined, when we talk about diversity, I still feel like there's this very prevalent, like white facing stature that needs to be broken, because even when I think about what a Black owned business is, it's not positive at all. And it's just because it's been kind of embedded in us to just be like, well, to be professional, we need to have like scripted font and like furry everything. And like, you know, things need to be white and glitter. And that's just kind of my narrative.
What are we selling, JoJo? What are we selling?
I'm also from Atlanta. So this is like, I'm from the country, so this is what my image of professionalism in like the Black community means. So when we talk about, again, like what diversity means in other, you know, aspects, I kind of had to conform a bit. And I think Erwin, you even brought this up. It's like, when do I add my own flair or my own personality to something that I'm doing that isn't still white led?
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, we were talking about the idea of simplicity and even like minimalism being this design expression of narrowing in everybody else's individuality and perspective. And there was like this, I was listening to a talk with Virgil and this other dude, and they were talking about his book, and they were referencing this like Black architect who like had mad style, rocked like colorful Air Maxes, and like had like a dope ass outfit on. And that architect was literally talking about how he puts himself into his architecture and every piece of himself into his architecture. But then when you saw his building, you saw none of that. You saw none of the color, you saw none of the vibrancy, you saw none of the energy. It was just a standard minimalist piece of architecture. And so it's like over time, even as creatives, even though we're supposed to be thinking outside the box, we fit our individuality into someone else's narrative.
Yeah.
Without bringing ourselves into it and having that and taking pieces of it to maybe like add to our eclecticness. Like we tend not to do that. But then we still like will explain this piece of minimalist art as if it embodies who we are when it doesn't.
Because like, what is luxury, right? Like, what is professionalism? It has nothing, it's not rooted from us. It's not rooted from people of color. We literally conform what we think professionalism, luxury, X, Y, and Z to the European or, you know, Swedish or whatever other standards. It's not bold. It's not expressive. It's not unique. It literally is just like this very white washed, very minimal, you know, expression.
Well, how often have you heard, well, you're so colorful? How often I get told that all the time. All the time. Oh my God, you're so colorful. And I'm like, oh, because you're not. Oh, it's your problem, not mine.
Yeah, and I think it goes back to what we were talking about, where it's like all of these very subtle things begin to make us feel like other. Like we have to fit in order to like be taken serious. There's like that great like article that was on HBR, which is from like a real case where organizations were looking for more diversity, and they were like, come, bring yourself, bring everything that you are. We want you and your diversity. And they ended up hiring and wanting this girl who had dreads. But in order to hire her, they were like, you have to cut your dreads. And so it's like, they want that originality, they want that diversity, they want all of these things, but then there's still, again, the lack of inclusivity. And so I think that's where we're even getting back to like the root of the conversation, where it's like, when you just chase numbers and data, it doesn't solve that. Because you can hire as many POC, and I'm not just saying Black people, you can have as many POC, as many people from like different gender norms and different gender backgrounds. You can hire all of these people, but then if they don't feel included and there's not an inclusive environment or an equitable environment, then it means nothing other than you now have a good press release.
Yeah.
Because you're making them conform to who you are in order for them to feel included, which is literally the issue with America that we're trying to solve.
Yeah.
It's like you're just creating little Americas with the same issues. Because America is hella diverse, but there's still issues, which means it's not about the numbers. It's about
Well,
inclusivity and
and let's think about this like realistically too, Erwin, because I would agree with you. America is diverse, but America's major cities are diverse, and there are communities outside of those major cities that have some diversity. But in reality, when we're looking for people to like thrive and be successful, it's in those larger um, communities that we find the diversity. I mean, overall, um, Jojo mentioned earlier, or Lindsay mentioned the poor white family is more likely to get, a house versus a middle, middle income Black family, right? So I mean, and I'm not saying, trust me, I'm with you on like the numbers are not always indicative of reality, but when it comes down to it, like
Oh, your headphones.
think,
Right.
Your headphones cut out for a second. Uh-oh.
No,
Ryan, we can't hear you.
Nope.
I think your headphones
We
died.
can't hear you.
She's on a roll too. Damn.
Switch your audio.
Oh, I hear you. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I'm back. Sorry. So I guess what I was trying to say, or my point is that even though like our reality of diversity and inclusivity and even like our view is very different than a huge portion of America that is still not diverse, that is still doesn't look like what we, and when they, I mean, I don't know about y'all, but when I go to the country, I feel very out of place. And I know what it's like to be in the country. Like I grew up going to a farm, like working on a farm, like in Mexico and stuff like that, because that's where my family was. And so I understand a lot about like country life and farming and things of that sort. So I'm not like out of place, but there is still not a whole lot of diversity out there. In like the wider birth of America, if you think about it.
Companies can create diversity if they really focus on what implicit biases are. There is something happening right now that is what they're trying to do is great. What is going to happen is going to be a complete backfire. Like LinkedIn has a group that's doing it. There's a huge spreadsheet roaming around out there right now that Black people have put their names on. And it's like their names, their credentials, like, like who they worked for, like all the other stuff, basically their resume. And then as I was talking to Erwin and Jojo about this, and that is just going to create like, I'm just going to quote Erwin, like that's going to create a space where companies can just be like, I need a Negro. I'm going to go pluck it from here. Like, it's just a list you can go pluck people from. And I can see the good in what people are trying to do and create these spaces. So Black people and people of color have visibility into the workforce, or they can get their name out there. But if you're going to do this, you have to do it correctly, which means that you need to take those people and take their resumes, put them also in a stack of resumes with other individuals who are not people of color, take their names off of it, and then put it in front of a hiring manager. That way the hiring manager has nothing to go off of but that person's qualifications. Because I'm chock full of facts today. Like I learned today that people with white sounding names are 2 times more likely to get a job than people with Black sounding names who went to the same college, graduated with the same GPA, like who graduated from the same program. If you have a Black sounding name, you are twice as likely to not get picked for a job just because of your name. So if Black people are putting their names in these hats, and Black people have very different names sometimes, that's already at a disadvantage. So you're just going to go that list, say, I need 2 Black people, go ahead and hire them. It needs to be put in a list with a bunch of different candidates sent to a hiring manager, names erased. So it can be done. It just has to be done very strategic and thoughtfully.
I believe there was like a Radio Lab too that talked about how an orchestra eliminated bias from their. Did you hear that one, Aaron? Like basically, you're right. Like so much, Lindsay. It's like it is almost impossible to eliminate bias from the process of like hiring. I've been thinking about this a lot lately. Like even in the industry we're in, I'm like, damn, okay, could we do this? Could we completely eliminate our ability to sort of have associations with who this person is, like their heritage, what they look like, and go purely on credentials. Number one, I was like, I don't know how simple that would be. And then two, I don't know that if I would want to, because I also value diversity. And I kind of want to bring in people who have a very different perspective than what we have in our culture. But you're right. Like, I think we do need to eliminate bias up until we can't anymore. Like to the greatest extent of our own possibility, like in the hiring process, like those people do need to be put into a stack of people and eliminate any sort of identifiable bias that may trigger somebody to create a shortcut in their mind, because that's what we do as human beings. We're like, we see a name and you have an association. You see I think I was saying it earlier, but you see, we had a meeting earlier today and they were talking about, I see somebody walking in all black and cool sneakers and I have an association with them. And it's like the American experiment, what it's supposed to be to me, it is the opposite of what our human sort of natural inclination is to do, which is like, we want to have a melting pot. We want to have a place, or the ideas, we want to have a melting pot of all ideas, and people can come here, all are welcome. We don't live in that society. I'm just saying the idea of it is that, but that is very opposite to what we do as like human beings. Like we sort of, we like symbolize everything. We tokenize everything and go like, oh, I'm going to associate that culture because I don't know much about it with the very few things I do know about it, and go, that's my shortcut. Like that person is Mexican. This is probably like 9 other things that I will assume. And I think we do that in the hiring process at the same time. So it's like, it's so important to create systems that I guess don't lean into that natural inclination. Like how do we rip your name off of it, rip everything else out of it, and go, based on these things alone, who do we want to make it through this like layer of filtering, so to speak?
I feel like that's like the start of it, but the other thing that needs to be acknowledged is equal pay. And I would just watch this interview from Viola Davis, and like Viola Davis is like, I won like Oscars, Emmys, I've been on Broadway, off Broadway, and she's been compared to like Meryl Streep and all these other like actresses, these white actresses who they went to the same like schools and stuff together, and they still call her the Black Meryl Streep. She's like, why can't I just be Viola Davis and you pay me like you pay Meryl Streep? And it's like, yeah, we could take her name Viola Davis off of X, Y, and Z, but when she shows up, she's Viola Davis, and her performance might be better. I honestly think it's better than a Meryl Streep, but you know what I mean? Because she shows up with this color, you know what I mean? Even though she has the experience, she's still not paid as such. And I think that's also something that within a workforce that we need to express, not only being a person of color, but also like the differences between like men and women as well.
Agree. Yeah. I mean, that industry is a little bit like gross just in general, right? Because they will across the board go, I'm going to pay you based on marketability. And your marketability has like a direct reflection to cultural biases that already exist. And if you're somebody that's marketable to a minority class, I mean, look at Asian Americans in that industry, like who have been passed over and over and over and over again, yet they've put out quality content in years, and that has proved its ability to be profitable, yet still don't see the same sort of respect and or recognition. And it's the same thing with Viola Davis. Like, quality of the content that she delivers to people is as good or better, right? But that's not how they pay people, sadly, which is gross. I don't know. I don't really have a good answer for it, but I'm just saying, like, I'm just talking about the industry as a whole.
I think that goes with like even our industry too, because if I can think back to like one of my first experiences in industry, I was a front desk person and they hired me because I was cute. You know what I mean? But then when I started to be like too black, right? Like when I started to wear my hair like wild, one of the comments I got was like, well, can you put your hair up like how you had it in your interview? You know what I mean? Or like when I stepped away and we were hiring someone else, we literally looked past a lot of people because this person had to be the face. You know what I mean? So they had to be cute, you know, maybe like a model in their past, or, you know, come with like very little experience. So one, we didn't want to pay them anything, but they had to come with a qualification of only that they were attractive, which steps into industries just even outside of like acting and singing.
It does. It does. Absolutely.
And I mean, Jojo, with like the hair, like Black people take their hair so seriously. Like that is not a game. I love your face. That's not a game to Black people, Black women especially. And it is like those microaggressions where it's like someone comes up to you and they're like, "Oh my God, your hair is so different. Did you not think that maybe I have a different like curl pattern? Like, did you not think that like you use a flat iron just like I use a flat iron, and a flat iron makes your hair straight? Flat iron also makes my hair straight. Like, why is it a call out that suddenly my hair is curly?" And those types of things, it's like, oh, well, you look so edgy with your head shaved. It's like, who cares? Like, it just doesn't matter. Like, you should go back to that hairstyle. That's another brand beat in general too. Just like Black hair, like women in their hair. And it is so
a whole movie about it.
Yes. It almost feels like they wouldn't pick you if you would have came somewhere like something else.
Yes.
You know what I mean? Like it feels like you have to have this like agency standard, or like just standard in general of what you should look like when you come to an interview, and then versus like who you really are, which they actually feel privileged enough to question it, which is a problem.
Which is like the most crazy thing to me, especially in the creative field.
Yes.
Like we say we want like complete openness, and we want you to bring your creative mind and your vision and like all of your uniqueness and packaged in however you want. But then there's stuff like that happens where it completely contradicts or goes against all of those things. It's like we want you to bring whoever you are and everything that you are and all of your experiences and the beauty of your culture, but in a way that's packaged acceptable to me.
Okay, Jojo, don't be too angry. Don't be too loud. Oh, I know Juanita's here today because I can hear her.
Well, Jojo is kind of angry and loud, though. I was.
But that's just you. That's just you.
Oh, it's you.
Oh, I thought that for you, Jojo. Damn.
Only to people who deserve it. Otherwise.
So it's even that, like, just growing up in a Black family, like, we were loud, we were like boisterous, we had energy. And so that's the language you learn around family, right? And that's the language you go out into the world with and get told that's not the right language. So we essentially speak, even if I don't speak another like language, we speak multiple cultural languages that we have to like, and I'm sure I've hoped people heard of like code switching. But it's like, we have to constantly switch between this style versus this style, and then translate that style into another style. And that's exhausting.
That's how we fuck up.
That is the fucked up thing. Like when you get a micro taste of success, like you have to code switch. Right? Like when you go into anything where you are operating in a slightly different, we talked about this before, we're just like being Black people representative in the industry that we are, talking with CEOs of companies that we do, like regardless, like you do, like I always say, like, it's pressure you probably put on, I'll even go this far, I'll say pressure I put on myself, but it's like I feel like I have to code switch to some extent to, you know, like we talked about, like I had to button up a little bit more, I'm fighting against a little bit of a bias, like I need to correct on behalf of all of the people. It's like, yeah, like I can definitely do everything that you need me to do for you as somebody you want to partner with on a business level. But that requires a little bit of code switching to some extent, because if you didn't do that, you would feel like it's stacked against you. And that's the fucked up part. There's like an inherent bias that, like, if you were just the way that you are with your cousins, you know what I mean? Or whatever, that in that room, that's not okay for you to be that way and still be knowledgeable enough, talented enough to do the job that this person wants you to do.
Yeah.
Are you still going to give me your money if I sound ghetto?
Yeah.
That's what you're saying. Like,
that's the thing, is like I hate
Right.
this statement that's like broad. There's like, you sound white, and it's
Mhm.
like, yeah, I get it because I'm from Atlanta, and so if you see me around my Atlanta friends, my accent is a lot different versus like me just having this conversation here, and it's like, yeah, and I get teased for it. Like I literally, they were like, "Oh, you don't have an accent, or you're from wherever," and it's like, yeah, because I actually have to appease my audience, and most of my audience is around being around white people. But I hate that statement because I have to do this. I have to learn this. You know, I have to embody this, and it sucks not feeling accepted by the people who can't switch, the people who shouldn't switch. I shouldn't switch, but I had to teach myself how to, and now like I'm being reprimanded within my own culture because I'm not authentic versus like I wouldn't be able to get a job unless I did it.
And then you hear things in the workplace where it's like, oh my God, you're so articulate. You speak so well. Did you not think I could? Like,
hold on. A little while ago, Irvin was like, oh, big word, Wani. When we were talking about feelings, and I was like, a bit trepidatious, and he goes, "Oh damn, check out that word!" Like
that was a big word. I was like,
That's what I'm saying. Like that had nothing to do with anything other than that was a good word.
Yeah.
I mean, look at his shirt.
Maybe it's on my end. I'm sorry.
No, it captures so much.
He has never picked up a thesaurus once.
It's just so disheartening to hear that. And then when people do hear you outside of work, they're like, oh, you seem so relaxed right now. Yes, bitch, because I'm on all day at work and have to be mindful of my phone all day. So yes, I'm going to go to this bar with my Black coworkers and I'm going to unwind a little bit. And this is how I talk at home. And
you can do it with me, Lindsay.
Huh?
When this is all over, you can do it with me. I'm waiting. I'm waiting.
Yes, our wine dates. Yes, it's like you go home and that's what you can do. And like your coworkers and your bosses are like, they're kind of stunned. They're like, oh, this is like a different you. It's not a different me. I just put a different tone at work so you understand that I am capable of doing my job and I can present and talk in front of executives, but I could do that regardless of the way I speak.
Yeah, it's like their desire for conformity makes us like wash ourselves.
Yes, it's exhausting.
And it's like even to parallel it with like other stories, like Sun, a designer within our organization, Korean from Korea. Like at the end of the day, she's exhausted. Not because we're doing like physical labor, but because she has to translate everything in her head, right? And so it's, while it's not as extreme, there is some of that we've just been doing our entire life, which is like, what do I need to be like in this situation versus this situation in order to be accepted, in order to feel buttoned up, in order to like dispel bad rumors, because we also carry with us the weight of like our whole culture and our whole race, because we're usually the only ones in a room. And they're like, right now you're the ambassador of Blackness. And we're gonna judge the whole culture based on our interaction with you.
So Erwin,
that's true. Oh, go ahead.
Go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say, like, I felt that same thing you were talking about so much before, like one, being an ambassador of Blackness, but like, look, my name, which is popping up on here when I talk, is like when people I can't even tell you how many times it happens constantly. Like if I talk on the phone to somebody, I'm Andrew Yanisik. Like my last name is Czech German. My first name is Biblical. I don't sound Black. I always think about the fact that this person's never seen me, and like, I'm gonna show up, and this is about to be a surprise, and I'm always curious. Like, this is about to be a surprise every time, and then I feel like I'm an ambassador for either Blackness, or if they think that I'm Puerto Rican, which always happens, but But like you feel that like every time, yeah, like you feel it like every time you go anywhere, and it's like, why do I have that pressure,
that weight
you constantly put on yourself to do everything? And then it shows up in the workplace. Absolutely.
Yeah. Like if you, I think for myself, it's like, especially being the face of a lot within even our organization, or just like to clients, or just being professional in general. If I mess up on anything, a period, an apostrophe, or just like not using enough, you know, big terms, or not saying this and that, or just even speaking in public, I feel like if I'm not carrying myself like I'm educated, even though I know I am, this is level of shame that I put upon myself. I'll go back and see like, oh, fuck, I forgot a period or a comma here. And I will literally internally beat myself up when I've seen my white counterparts do it all the time. You know what I mean? Like we come from this text generation where like, we used to type with like big little like fucking letters all the time. Like I literally had to relearn how to talk after this like MySpace, you know, Black Planet, Facebook like generation where just like nothing mattered at all. And we had to relearn that. And it makes me feel kind of ashamed of not feeling as statured as a lot of my other counterparts who didn't have to go through that, you know, cycle of their life.
I totally empathize with you there, Jojo. Like you and I work very closely together. Like I consistently have Jojo proof my emails because like I want to make sure one, my grammar's there, I didn't miss a period, like my punctuation's fine. Also, that I'm not writing in a tone that will come off as shit, she's an angry Black woman. Like she's not happy with the email I wrote. So she's responding and her tone is now aggressive. Like, so I have to constantly have people proof my emails that way I'm like, because I can come across a little aggressive sometimes, I must admit, but
angry typing.
Yeah. And I go for it sometimes. It's like, I wish I could just express myself the way I want to express myself without people thinking that I'm coming across as rude or aggressive, because 9 times out of 10, I'm not. Or like when Erwin and Andrew say like, we're the ambassador of like Blackness in a room, I always feel like people are watching us really closely when we're in a room too, like down to our facial expressions. At times, this is just my face, and it's not always going to be plastered with a toothy grin. I'm going to be listening to you. I'm going to be paying attention to you. That's not going to be plastered with a grin. And the minute my face goes down, or I type okay, or sounds good, or whatever, are you mad? Are you okay? What's wrong? This is my face. Or I give you an answer. It was just something simple. But I know my white counterparts do not have to go through that ever. Ever.
Yes. That's real. That's real.
Like the amount of times I have to say, this is my face. The amount of times that Jojo and I slack each other and we're like, hey, my face is off, tell me to fix my face. We should not have to do that. We shouldn't. We do, but we shouldn't have to do that. Like,
I'm just gonna tell you to fix your face if you got like some stuff on there, okay? I mean, like, other than that,
well, yeah, all of this is like under,
as I am.
Yeah, I think all of this is just underpinning and like giving that basically the side story that we're all living within all organizations. Like POC within organizations live with all of this stuff and all of this weight every single day. And then on top of it,
and we're like with the organization that's free to express ourselves. Like our feelings isn't rooted from being at this agency, is rooted from years of oppression and standards, quality of standards. It's not just this. Like no one has ever corrected me here, or well, I'm like, right. No one has ever made me feel bad about being Black versus like what society has made me feel bad about being Black.
Yeah.
Right. And that carries on with you. You know what I mean?
Yeah, there's the trauma. And again, this goes back to like, when you actually recognize the issue, then you can also recognize that there is a trauma there. And what's interesting to me is like conversations happening around social that say it's like not real and the law is lifted, so you're good if you just work hard. As POC, you can get to the same space. But then those same people can see how child abuse would affect a kid into their adulthood, even if like after 14, They weren't abused anymore. They got into another foster home that was like super loving and caring. That kid still has some trauma, and people can recognize that, but they can't recognize the trauma of a group of people who basically had an abusive, starved childhood.
Yeah.
That's like what we had for the first like however many years we were here as a group of people. And then it was like, now you have like a adoptive family who like loves you, so you good.
Yeah.
Don't try and cope with all those.
Not only how to accept that love, but how to foster that love, right? You're just like, this love is enough. They just love me and that's it. It's like, no, you have to go a little bit further and like educate, like my like reference to being about like a white family adopting a black child. It's like you trying to learn how to do my hair, you just put it in a ponytail and like that's cute. Like, no, you have to get on YouTube. You're gonna have to kind of figure it out. We're gonna have conversations about how I want it to be, or like, you know, what we think is work, how to moisturize it. It's not just like the love itself, but we're actually just accepting the love at this moment. Like you have accepted me as a Black person in your company, and that has become the standard of like, that's good enough.
Mm-hmm. And that's why data don't matter.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Wheel.
Samuel.
I mean, is this it?
I don't know. I mean, I feel like we kind of naturally just came to a good point.
I like it.
Yeah.
Was
there any engagement from the
engagement?
Stop.
Moderator Eric, tell us what's up.
Yeah, we have a couple comments and questions. Let's see here. So Matt Surowich said, the laws have helped create, sustain, and institutionalize racism and bias. That's a good point.
There you is.
And a question from Aaron Wade for Erwin.
Oh,
Erwin, before you jumped off, you brought up non-BIPOC making products or goods to raise money for pro-Black organizations or causes. Would love to hear the whole thought you had there.
Oh, yeah. So, I mean, I jumped off and like, I even begin to like, I'm conflicted about it because I think it's a time when like Black and non-Black or like Black people have the opportunity to heal through their art and have that art be seen by more people. Like for me, the shirts, I was expecting just to raise like $700. Even like even before I decided to sell them, I was just deciding to give them out. Because for me, it was more about a conversation. It was more about me healing and like saying stuff that I have always said about my people and what makes me proud to be who I am. And each of my shirts that I've done is a continuation of that conversation and a continuation of like what I'm feeling in that moment, up to the very last one, which was like free the world of supremacy, and like being very proud of like, this is a turning point of history. So to me, it's a conversation started by a Black artist about a movement that's happening to us and for us and also for everybody else. So I think that's why I'm conflicted about it. I love, and to JoJo's point, it's like, this is a time to actually shine light on these like, and I'm not saying just me, but like these Black creators who are amazing and great, but never get any shine.
Absolutely.
And so I think anytime there's like distraction from that in this time, that's when it creates conflict for me. Like if you're creating something, you're donating, great. Yeah. I don't know. Again, it's like two sides. It's a double-edged sword. Like I want people to create things and use their talents to make sure that they're like supporting the movement, donating to the movement. But I also think there's like this moment where Black artists can use their art forms to really heal and really spark a deeper, richer conversation and narrative. So if you're creating something just to create without any of that emotion, then I feel like it falls short, if that makes sense. I think that maybe that's what I'm saying. Like this is a time for real art, to create conversation, to create dialogue, because conversation at its heart and at its core is what will push society forward, because it helps to issue an empathy. And those hard conversations help to issue an empathy. So I don't know if there's a real answer. It's like, do what you're going to do, because if it's going to raise money and support the movement, great. But just make sure that there's still space for POC artists to like tell their story, because these are the stories that just haven't been heard and have gone on deaf ears, have been seen as conspiracies, and I just think it's like,
I do think like there was something to like, and that ties a little bit to like making sure that there's space is important. Like what we went through with that little bit on social media where people decided to be silent to allow people to speak out on things that are rarely heard is important, because I think it's not to even say necessarily that every single person that had something to say was necessarily going to be effective, but we should all recognize the value in catharsis. Like we've all dealt with somewhat of this to some extent, and when it happened, I was like, this is good for people who are dealing with this emotionally. This is a good time for people to be able to, there's a lot to say because there's just a lot of emotions. And so, I mean, to your point, Erwin, it's like, it's not a clean answer to that, but it is important to recognize that like there's value in giving space for those other things to happen. And at the same time, I think you're right. Like it's important for us all to recognize that it's like there's value in everybody contributing to the message at the same time too.
Yeah, like this
in whatever way that they can.
The power of the civil rights movement was that like it had other people involved other than just Black people, right? And it fought for the freedoms that we all enjoy across all races. And so that's why I think it's just like in the moment when I saw people seeming to just like create things and not necessarily have like a deeper meaning or a deeper message, other than it's almost like the black box post, or like what we were saying about brands. Brands can do something and they can post something, but then is there real meaning behind what you're posting, or are you just posting it to get some clout and to ride the cultural movement? So I think it's more of a deeper question to those artists who would create something of like, check with yourself first before just jumping in on a trend or a perceived trend. Check with yourself.
Or are you riding this wave? Are you, you know, hopping on the train?
Yeah.
I think
nothing creative should come that easy. Oh, sorry, go ahead, Jojo.
No, I was just going to say, I think my personal answer to a lot of this is, it's like, I have a side page where I actively search a lot of Black artists, and I ask them for permission to post them. And I follow it up with like questions, and like I have conversations, and I build a kind of connection with these individuals. And I think that's okay for me coming as another Black individual trying to raise up another Black individual. But for these bigger companies, or even just for like a white-led company that has the endorsements, has the money, has the followers, like I think that we should authentically ask them, you know, to maybe repost or incorporate their work. But one, give them the credit. Two, pay them, because you can do it. You can pay them. I think it's one thing of just like stealing someone's idea or just reposting a Black artist's authentic work that's relating to what they're feeling, to their own emotions, that authentic art that we're all looking and seeking for, and highlighting it. And I've actually heard Black artists turn a lot of these like bigger companies down, because it's like, no, I don't want you just to post something that's mine. I want you to acknowledge that it's mine. I want you to put in my own verbiage, and I want you to pay me, because those are all very important. And when it comes to uplifting our community and actually making a change that actually matters.
Yeah, revolt TV.
Yeah.
Right. Say this, man.
Just posted it. Nothing.
Yeah. Cool. Any other questions?
No, that was about it.
All right.
All right, y'all.
Well, Jojo, Kirk popped up. My husband was listening to 2 Brandbeats ago, and we signed off because Jojo stated that she had to pee. So Kirk asked, "Are you guys signing off?" Because Jojo.
I literally have to pee. I was going to say it, but I didn't want to say it.
Yeah, so that's just so everybody knows. Whenever we end Brandbeats, that's why.
Yeah, there it is.
Jojo's gotta pee.
That's a sign off right there.
I gotta go.
We should call it
drinking alcohol for like an hour and a half.
Bladder beats, you know. Every bladder beat, you gotta dip in, dip out.
All right, so are we done?
Yeah, thanks everybody for tuning in to Brandbeats. We'll be back again next week.
Yeah.
Bye,
Peace, everyone.
everyone.